Continuous monitoring is a big subject within the world of risk management. A lot of folks are looking at it to be the holy grail of security. If I can do continuous monitoring, I can keep up with the latest threats. I can keep up with the advances that attackers are making. I can keep up with security and make it manageable. I will say that it's not the holy grail. Nothing is the holy grail in security space. But if implemented correctly, this is a very good framework for doing security within your organizations. The continuous monitoring process is really spelled out in NIST 800, Special Pub 800-37, where it talks about the security lifecycle. If you look at the way this lifecycle is built, it goes through categorizing information systems, selecting the appropriate security controls for your environment, implementing those security controls, assessing the security controls to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing, authorizing the system to operate, and then monitoring. Continuous monitoring really focuses on that last block there, which says that you should really be looking at security on a continuous basis. Always look at security based on the changes that you're seeing within your network. So as information changes, as equipment changes, as users change, look for the changes in your network and make sure you're monitoring that for additional security risks. This is a much better approach than the once-a-year security audit, where you only get a snapshot in time of here's what I look like today when the audit was completed. Tomorrow, because we're rolling out a new email server or we're rolling out new applications, it'll be completely different, making that particular audit that we did yesterday completely irrelevant. So what continuous monitoring says is continually look for changes in your environment, assess the risk from those changes, and do something about it to support risk management decisions. A good analogy here is one with physical security. So you've probably seen guard stations where they've got multiple cameras set up and a video wall display showing cameras. Now, imagine if those cameras only worked one day a week. How effective would that be at physical security? Probably not. The same is true for doing security audits once a year. You're only getting a snapshot in time. You have no idea what else is going on over the course of the week for the cameras or the course of the year from a security audit perspective. So every organization should implement some level of continuous monitoring that will help them understand and give them visibility into what's going on their network from a security perspective continuously throughout the year. Now, there is a recognition that you can't monitor everything all the time. And you see this is true with physical security as well. In an organization, that video wall where you've got cameras pointing at things, what do those cameras point at? Do they actually point at everything in the organization? Probably not. They're looking at the high-risk areas, the entry points, the critical information or the critical storage areas. And so from a physical security perspective, they get it. They do a risk assessment, figure out what's most important to them, and put a camera on it so they can see it. Same should apply true in the cybersecurity realm, where you do a risk assessment, figure out what's most important to you, and monitor that. That's where you expend your resources. So recognize that you can't monitor everything at once, all the time. So prioritize your risk and look at what's most important to you. Public-facing versus the internal web server. If you know that you're a frequent victim of web defacements, maybe you want to spend your resources there rather than looking at your internal web server. Sample size, do you look at everything which is not tractable, or do you look at a representative sample or a small percentage of things? Again, go back to the risk prioritization. I would say that if you can't look at everything, then pick a percentage of things that you can look at and make sure that those are your critical items. And then how frequently do you need to check? Well, this is kind of a misnomer for continuous monitoring because you're continuously checking. So there really is no frequency associated with it. And what you're doing is really validating that the controls you have in place still meet your security objectives. So as things change, look at the security controls you have and make sure that, do these still work for me? And if so, all right, I'm good. Why do continuous monitoring? Well, cybersecurity is not just compliance with a set of standards or a framework. There is no silver bullet. There is nothing out there that's going to stop all the attacks against you and your organization. Vulnerability patching is not a one-time event. And so you'll quickly realize that there are events that are happening out there on the network that you need to keep up with from a continuous monitoring perspective in order to meet your own security objectives. And so this concept of continuous monitoring is a way to effectively manage the information security risk and do some explicit decision making around, all right, what's most important to us? What can we actually do? What can we get away with from a control standpoint? And do our controls actually work? Characteristics of a good continuous monitoring program. Well, it's going to maintain a continuous picture of your security posture. It's going to measure that and be able to tell you that I'm doing security good or I'm not doing security good. You should be able to identify deviations from what you expect to happen as part of this continuous monitoring program. If you can't do that, or you don't have the right visibility, or you're not doing it in an automated fashion, you're probably not doing it effectively. How do you keep up with all the changes on your network? Please let the computers do that for you. That's why we created computers. Let the computer do the work of managing the changes on the network, informing you of the changes on the network, reevaluating the security controls around those changes, and presenting you with a, here's what's changed, here's what's currently, the security controls are working or are not working. And what you're doing is really measuring the effectiveness of the security controls over constant time. And based on that, you can see, all right, what do I need to fix? What are the risks that we're running now that things in our environment are changing? And it should be, again, all automated. For large organizations, this is the only way that this is a tractable problem. Make sure that it's automated. Have the computers do the work for you. So how do you use automated tools for continuous monitoring? Well, you can use automated tools to determine when changes to your network occur. Like your DHCP server will tell you when devices are pulling IP addresses. If you don't recognize the MAC address, you have something new that you need to go look at. You can use host intrusion detection programs or host inventorying programs to tell you when changes to the file system, Windows registry, if you're on a Windows box. You can use those types of programs to tell you when changes occur at the host level. And you can go look at security controls around that. But you need to use automated tools to get an ongoing situational awareness picture of what's changing on your network. Once you understand what's changing, then you can go through the risk assessment process of, okay, do my controls still work? And there are even tools out there that will help you with, if you're subscribing to the formal risk management model in 800-37, it says that you have to have a system security plan, security assessment report, and based on that, I need a plan of action and milestones to address the gaps that I saw. And it's a very documented, regimented process. But there are tools that can help you with that. So if you're subscribed to that model and you have to have a system security plan, then there are tools that can help you automate that process, detect changes in your environment, look at the security controls that are currently in place, and tell you where you have issues. So how would you actually implement continuous monitoring? Well, first and foremost, define a strategy. Figure out what you're going to do, what the scope of it should be, Are you looking at just critical assets? Are you looking at everything? Define the overall strategy for the continuous monitoring program and define what you want to get out of it. Once you do that, then you can look at establishing the program, put in the pieces, the automated tools that you need, the data reporting pieces that you need, and then actually go and implement that program. Once you've done that, turn it on and start looking at the analysis that it's running. It's going to kick out a bunch of, I'm detecting changes on these hosts, controls that either aren't working now or used to work or are working great. Look at the analysis and the results of those, the automated tools that you're running, and respond to the findings. So the differences in there, your tools should highlight things that you need to go address. Rather than saying the world is ending, they should provide you with very specific things that you need to go look at. So you can go respond to those, and then based on that, update your monitoring strategy or your continuous monitoring program to give you more fine-tuned results. And what you'll find that after when you first implement this program, you're going to be getting a ton of data. It's like turning on an intrusion detection system for the first time. You're going to end up with a ton of stuff. What do you do about it? Well, you fine-tune it. You look at the results that you're getting, and you say, all right, these are unimportant to me. I'm going to shut off that alerting piece. I don't care about that anymore. And what you're left with is a smaller subset. So the next time it kicks out a report, you've got a smaller data set to work with. And it does take time, it does take effort to whittle it down to where you've got a finely tuned program that's actually working for you. Reference models, you are free to reinvent the wheel if you prefer. There are lots of organizations that go try to do continuous monitoring, and they sit down at a table and they go, okay, we're going to do continuous monitoring. What do we do? And they figure it out from scratch. There is at least one model out there that you can use if you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but that's the CISSP, Continuous Assessment Evaluation, Situational Awareness, and Risk Scoring Reference Architecture Report. Wow, that's a name if I ever heard one. This was developed by NIST and DHS together. It's described by NIST 7756. And it combines automated logging with a dashboard so you can see what's going on and what the risks are in relatively real time. There are challenges with continuous monitoring, of course, and this is why not everybody is doing this and why there's not a single simple model to follow for how to do this. Simply look at 800-53. Look at ISO 27002, look at the COBIT standards, the ITIL standards, look at any reference framework, and you'll find that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of security controls in these documents. All combined, there's a significant set of controls in there that can be quickly overloading. And so you're overloaded with, I've got all these controls I need to monitor. Okay, well that's problem one. Next is I'm getting all this data that says, this control's not working, this one sort of works, but not really, there's a problem over here. And so you end up with all this information, and now you need to figure out what's my remediation strategy. So it's great to be able to collect all this data. If you are collecting it, you got over the first hurdle. Now you've got to get over the next one, or what do you do about it? And so there's potential for information overload in here. Add to that the fact that not everything can be automated. You got to push the automated tools. You got to use the things, use the computer to the best extent possible. But there are some things that are just not going to be able to be checked by a computer or some automated process. In which case now you have to integrate manual checks into your continuous monitoring process. If you are going to implement this continuous monitoring framework organization-wide, the bigger you are, the harder it's going to be. There are going to be a lot more complications. I'm saying this not to scare you out of doing a program like this, but just recognize that this is a big undertaking. And so it's not something you're going to sit down and, all right, I've got a solution, I'm going to implement it tomorrow, and then by Friday I'm going to be out on the golf course again because my work is done. Continuous monitoring is a big process. So the larger you are, the harder, or the greater the complications, certainly the potential for complications here. Human capital is prone to culture shock. What that really means is socialize the effort first, make sure you have executive support for it, and that the program is going to work for you and meet your needs before you actually sit down and start investing time in it. It will require you to standardize procedures across functional areas in order to be able to automate some of these things. Things have to look the same across the organization. So that might require some work. And then linking the various functions together towards some common goal. You've got to be able to communicate and collaborate together with, again, those different functional areas, because what you're trying to do is paint a picture across the organization of security so you can manage risk effectively.